So we're going to dive straight in. And we talked about last time lots of things. We talked about premium, we talked about starting off, we talked about leveling and other things. So if you haven't watched that and you'd like to, there is a link below. Be sure to go and check that out. This week we will be talking about many things: random dungeons, faction flagging, hellgates, lots of things. So let's just dive straight into it. What are random dungeons, guys? Who could tell me?
They are dungeons that are random.
Wow.
Am I wrong? They randomly spawn. They are dungeons, and their content. They have solo dungeons. They have group dungeons. You can get in a group of like 4 to 6. I think is like the average size for a group dungeon. You can do the solo ones obviously by yourself. And yeah, I mean they randomly generate throughout the map, and they have random levels in them. They have loot in them. They have pretty good fame in them. And that's essentially what they are. You can also get maps. You can maps will drop from them that will let you go to an even harder dungeon for a little bit more rewards. So that's the gist of it, but I'm sure I'm forgetting something if you guys want to help me out.
So Gugusteh, you are a man after my own heart. You do a lot of solo dungeons, don't you?
Yeah,
too,
definitely.
I love them. I think they're brilliant.
Yeah.
They
Those
only
are
came.
They're definitely super cool. I think one of the really interesting things is that they have many tiles, many different displays. It's always randomized inside also. So every dungeon is different, and you do not know exactly what you will find, even if you know that when you enter it, you know that the dungeon belongs to a faction. It can always be different, and that's what is cool with it. So I don't know your experience about the solo dungeons, Glenn, but I think this is a thing, yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot. I think I've got in nearly 5 weeks now, I've got nearly 14 million fame, pretty much from, I think 13 million of that is from solo dungeons alone. So I think I'm experienced in the solo dungeon department, definitely. I only recently found out that when it branches off to the boss, if the boss is on the path, it's a green chest. If it's like one mob away, it's a blue. And then the further away you have to go, the higher the tier the chest. So if you walk into a corridor that's not off the normal path that you're going on, the further back that you go, the better the chest that you're going to get. So I only found that out recently. I was only told because I thought that it was sort of random how it's generated. It is, but that's a good sort of indicator as to what sort of gear you're going to be getting.
I had no idea. That's good to know.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. That's pretty cool to know.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess while talking about solo dungeons, I think one thing people should know about them is that you can do them pretty much with any kind of gear. Let's say you're a T4, you have your super bow. You can do pretty much any kind of dungeons. Like even T8 in T4, it's possible to do them. I think you will be less efficient though. But yeah, you can do pretty much any kind of solo dungeons with any kind of gear. Well, as soon as you have enough DPS, because as a tank, it will be a bit harder. So you need to adapt your build according to, for example, if you use a mace, you will want to have the DPS Q spell instead of the resistance one. And it's pretty much doable alone for any case. I don't know if you ever done some super hard dungeons. This is pretty much the exception too. So like I tried myself some 8.2 maps. It was super hard to do. I couldn't finish one because the bosses hit super hard. So I don't know if you experience this kind of stuff, and like if you have any experience with a build that could work better than others for these dungeons. I don't know.
I mean, I personally, I always expect to get dove. So I always am wearing a
True.
PvP fit. So I'm wearing something that's just like, all right, I'm ready to basically take on 1 or 2 people, you know. And I just that's how I personally do it. But I mean, I think if you know, if you're a newer player and you're not going to as, you know, scary of a dungeon or a zone or an area, then you can probably get away with not having to do that. But I usually go in more dangerous areas where I know dungeons get dove frequently, because that tends to be where the higher rewards come from. So I end up just being pretty much PvP ready at all times. So yeah, but it is nice that you do have the freedom with a solo dungeon as opposed to a group dungeon where you don't necessarily need to complement someone else. You can kind of just go with whatever you want, and you can fame efficient.
So we've talked a lot about solo dungeons, and Veetus, you just mentioned about the group dungeons. So something that I've been doing is faction flagging to one of the main cities, and then going to find a random group dungeon and doing those. And they are good for many reasons. One, they're great fame farming places to go. And two, when you're faction flagged, you are representing that faction, and you earn points towards that faction that you can then spend on hearts. So hearts is something that you can use in crafting, and you can also use them in trade missions, which is something completely different that we're probably not going to cover now, but it's good to mention those anyway. Basically, you carry cargo from one city to another, and you get paid for it. The longer the distance, the more you get paid. But so these faction, when you do the group dungeons, if you faction flag, it's good for 2 things: you're fame farming, and you're getting points towards the faction that you're going on.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's true. Faction flagging is a great way to actually make money. And because the dungeon diving, because it's so lucrative money wise, there are more dungeon divers, it seems like, that are diving faction flaggers. So it's a little riskier, but you are making a little bit more money. The one downside, it would be that you're not making as much fame, but you are making that passive. You are making a lot more passive silver potentially by doing faction flagging. So it's like a little bit of a balance in terms of risk and reward. There's a little bit of pro and con that go with it, but yeah, it's great. And there's 3 ways to earn faction points. There's by killing a mob while you're faction flagged. There's by harvesting a node while you're faction flagged, and then there's capturing an outpost while you're faction flagged. So those are the 3 ways of actually earning points for your faction that you're representing.
Something that's been said many times is, I'm a healer. How do I do solo dungeons? What would be your advice?
Well,
if you I don't heal. God bless all healers. It's a tough job. If I'm ever gonna take up healing, I'm probably gonna find a group. Most groups basically depend and rely on healers anyway. So I think finding a group as a healer should be really, really easy to do. So if it's me, I'm probably not gonna go solo. I'm gonna do everything I can to find a group, because it just seems like that's what healers are for. It's for healing group play. But if I were to go, in a solo dungeon or something like that, all by myself as a healer, I probably, something great nature, just because of their mobility. I don't know. Something in the nature line would be I think easier. But I don't know. I don't know. Do you guys have other experience with like solo healing while in a dungeon?
I think I probably shouldn't say this, but the best option for a healer is to rat the dungeon. So basically rush through mobs until you go to a boss. You kill the boss really easily, because every healing staff has some mono targets, like more or less mono target damage ability, and you can pretty much kill any boss easily with a healing staff, and you can open every chest because of that. So you can get all the rewards. I think for the fame, it's not really efficient. Like, the problem with healing staffs is that you don't have any, like, you have more how can I say that? You have medium AoE damages, and most of the time in solo dungeons, you want to be able to kill all the small mobs and to finish the big mobs with some burst or some stuff like this. So, well, I think the best option is to raid the dungeon, definitely. But well,
There is a chest item I've been told that does an AoE, and the suggestions in my chat, it was to wear this chest item that does the AoE to try and help pulling the mobs, healing yourself up, using the chest to do the AoE, and then I've heard some success from it from people. So I'm just putting that out there. Do your research. I don't have the name of that chest.
Hellion Jacket, it sounds like.
I think that rings a
there's
bell.
3 of them actually.
Okay.
It's the jackets. So you have Stalker jacket, you have a Hellion jacket, and you have the Spectre jacket. And the first one is damage based. Second one is life leech. So you deal damage and you heal yourself with these damages. And the third one is big damages output, but you also deal damages to yourself. So it's
Well, there's
like
also
the third
Mercenary
one.
Jacket too. Would Mercenary Jacket, that would fall in that category too, right?
Mercenary jacket. Well, it's
Because you heal
self-healing.
off of your damage.
It's self-healing, self-healing, but yeah, it doesn't deal any damage. So
It doesn't do damage though.
a flat heal each time you. So I use that with my bow, but that's only because the normal bow has the enchanted quiver and it attacks quickly. So within the space of 6 or 7 seconds, I think it is, I make sure that it's at the highest stacks to get the biggest heal back from it. I can imagine something that doesn't attack very fast. It would heal you, yeah, absolutely, but I think that it wouldn't be as useful because you're only healing yourself from a single target. So what I was trying to say was to have that AoE damage to go through the dungeon with.
I think people are thinking about Stalker jacket because it's decent damages. You don't need any healing because you have a healing staff already, and well, it's better output than the Hellion jacket. And I clearly don't advise you to use a Spectre jacket to flame farm because it can lead to some really awkward situations. I already died, like literally died because of that. Because well, you deal damages to yourself, and if you are the last one dealing damages to you, like to yourself, it will kill you definitely. And well, there is a weird behavior about that. So you can basically completely die in a dungeon by yourself. So it's kind of, well, it's called a suicide jacket. It's for a reason, you know.
High risk, high reward, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if you know how to manage it, I think it's a good possibility.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't use that. No thanks. I'll die every time.
So if you are struggling to clear on your own, we're talking about on your own. There's plenty of suggestions for people that heal, and then Veetus, you talked about that jacket that healed when you did damage. What was that called again?
That was the Mercenary Jacket.
Mercenary jacket. So if you are a DPS and you are struggling to go through those solo dungeons, then definitely consider a mercenary jacket for that extra self heal. Small pools have that heal there as well. And as a rule of thumb, I personally, as a new player, when I was on the what's the tree called in the talent tree Destiny board? What's the one? Reaver, the Reaver. Mm-hmm. So follow that as your basic guideline. When you're at the first one, I think it's tier 3, and then the second one, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it goes all the way up to 8. That is what you want to be aiming for in terms of zones to go to do these solo dungeons. Because if you're only a tier 4 Reaver and you're out in Mercia trying to do tier 8 dungeons, you're going to have a really, really hard time. One, you're going to have a hard time getting out there with all the people that are looking to kill you. And two, when you get actually in there, I doubt very much you'll be going very far at all. So that's definitely a good guideline loose guideline to go with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I usually tell people to never go on dungeons over your river. And after that, I think it's pretty fine to go. Like, if you have a tier 6 river, you can go for tier 4 dungeon. It's not a problem. It's just like you feel it. If you feel like you clean the mobs really fast in a tier 4 dungeon, so you're more efficient, it's better to go in a tier 4 dungeon than in a tier 6 dungeon, where you will clean mobs really slowly and you will lose time. I think another advice I could give to players is the use of a soup.
Cabbage soup?
Yes, I
Yeah.
think it's really important because, especially if you don't have a healing staff, you will lose time if you don't use a soup between the pools, because you will obviously take damages. So you need to heal that, and yeah, it helps.
So solo dungeons, definitely, because you're on your own. Whereas with a group, you'd probably take a different food.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, with a group, well,
Omelette, cooldown reduction? Possibly.
depends.
Depends on the
Depends on
healer,
what you're
depends.
using. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
So a little bit of research into what food would be your best for your specialization. Hellgates, Hellgate spawns, all things Hellgates. Can you talk to me about what you know?
Gugusteh, you want this one?
I can, yeah.
Go for it.
So there's two kind of Hellgates. Yeah, there's 2v2 gates and there's 5v5 gates. Obviously, you go in as 2 people in a 2v2 gate, and you go as 5 people in the 5v5 gate. You can differentiate them by the color of the gate. So 2v2 gates are orange, and 5v5 gates are red. So it's a shiny red. You cannot miss it. The Hellgates are an instance where you can find some demons, some bosses. There's 5 bosses all around the gate. And when you enter it, another team can enter this instance. And obviously, you will be kind of forced to fight to be able to defeat the last boss and to be able to gain the rewards of the gate. So the point of the gates is to have, let's say an instance of PvP and PvE. Well, actually, I'm not sure it's good. I think I missed.
You've covered a lot there. So the different colors. So
Yeah.
when you were talking about the colors, we're talking about, if you look on the map and the zone that you're in, if that has a Hellgate, you'll see this like an oval circle. That's not a very good one. The shape, don't quote me on that one. But it's pretty much like a long circle like that. And the colors, the orange one is the 2s, and the red one is the 5s. And in there, it is full PvP, unless you're in a blue zone Hellgate. I've never done one before, so I'm just going from what I've been told. Do you die in a blue zone Hellgate?
Oh my gosh, I don't
I'm not sure about that.
so. I don't think so. I think it's I think that's the one that you don't. It's the only one that you don't.
I know for the yellow zone Hellgates, I know that you can die in there. No, it used to be only banned and get TP'd out. But for the blue zone Hellgates, I think it's 2v2, and I'm not sure if it kills you. But anyway, you should have a warning if it does.
It should tell you. It should every. That's one thing that game does really, really well, is it tells players for sure if you are entering any sort of area or dungeon, or not dungeon, but Hellgate, anything that's entering a new. If you're coming from blue to yellow, it tells you, hey, you could be entering PvP area, or blue to red, or yellow to red, whatever it is. It should tell you and pop up a warning. So I haven't done a blue zone Hellgate in a long time, but I feel like I remember it not not being something where you would die and lose your stuff. Just knocked out.
Good practice.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Like, one thing you need to know about Hellgates is that they're capped, they're soft capped. I'm not sure about Yellow Zone Hellgates, but for Red Zone and Black Zone Hellgates, it's capped at 1000 IP, and all the IP over that point is reduced by 50%. So if you enter it with 1100 IP, you will have 1050 IP in it. Yeah. So this allows pretty much anybody to enter it with, let's say, tier 6 gear. If you don't have any spec or stuff like this, you can still overcharge, and you can complete with let's say a medium cost, and the rewards are already high, because I think in one gate you can do 350k fame just with the bosses. So this is super high fame, and you have a lot of loot also, with a big chest in the middle that you can contest. So it's pretty cool, I think.
And the loot from the corpses after you kill them as well.
Yeah, 5 corpses, one per
Absolutely.
person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got to be careful. It's great. Hellgates are super popular content in the game. A lot of players really, really enjoy doing them. You got to be careful though. There are people that will game the system, and they'll come up with some really interesting like solo wonky stuff that is super unorthodox, and they'll do some things that like all of a sudden you think, oh my gosh, this is an empty gate, there's nobody here, I'm going to take this little chest here, get some loot, and the next thing you know, you're getting Hellion hooded and you don't have any idea what's going on, and you go to check the bag and you're like, I just got to get this loot, and all of a sudden that loot is gone. So you just got to be careful. You always got to be, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because sometimes it'll be really fun and easy and you'll get like a free loot, and then the next thing you know, you have someone coming out of stealth out of nowhere that just was waiting for the right time to make their move on and do whatever they're gonna do. So it can be like either really like cool and fun and great, or it can be really like stressful all of a sudden, and you feel like your head's on fire, and it just it can surprise you. It's can be eye-opening, but that's what makes a 2v2 or the 5v5 kind of Hellgates so interesting, is because they're super, like, I feel like they're super broad in what you can get. I feel like every experience is completely different than from each other.
I've only done a few Hellgates, but I have experienced a couple of solo players that are able to run forever, and I think that's a nature healer. Is it something like that? They're able to just continually run forever, and we were chasing them around the Hellgate for ages, and it was kind of a stalemate. We caught up to him in the end and killed him, which was brilliant, or her, and yeah. I think that's a really good point. I think as well, for me as a new player, the most difficult thing, especially when I go into 5v5s, is I seem to play with more experienced people, and they are calling out, okay, go on the curse, go on the frost, go on this person. And as a new player, I don't know what the curse staff looks like. I don't know what the frost looks like. So for me, it's really difficult, because I'm there like, okay, I'm just going to watch where the other guys are attacking, and I'll attack that target. So for me, it's a steep learning curve to find out what these guys are looking like, so that I can understand the shot calls and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a learning experience, and it's a fun part of the game, and it's actually really rewarding if you can do well. Like, they really up the rewards to make it super just lucrative and fame efficient. It's just it's a good activity. It's a fun activity. You're almost always guaranteed some sort of PvP interaction. So it's good to hone your PvP skills. But you certainly can get yourself into like a 30-minute stalemate, and it can be just like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was going to spend my next 30 minutes just not killing someone and them not killing me. I actually had that happen once really recently. Never had it happen before, where it was It was my team was a DPS and healer comp. My enemy, the two we were facing, was a same thing, a healer and a DPS comp, and we both had overcharged. Both teams had, and both of our healers, none of them got trashed, but our DPS, our weapons only got trashed. So at the end of the overcharge timeout, so we ended up for 30 minutes waiting for our overcharge to go to just end up not to be able to just hit each other with fists, basically. So at the end of the day, what they ended up just leaving with like a minute or less. There was probably like 50 seconds or something before the thing was about to just, because the timer starts after a certain amount of time, showing you when you're going to get just essentially evicted because it takes too long. And so they ended up leaving. But it was just like the worst stalemate ever. So yeah, you never know what you're going to get in Hellgate. It's great.
Yeah, I think one thing I always see when people talk about this kind of people running in Hellgates and trying to bait you into mobs or some stuff like this, people just say, okay, just bring some soldier boots in your inventory, like tier 4 soldier boots, for example, and you can just switch gear when you see this kind of people. You switch gear so you can just catch up with them and just corner them or something. Yeah. So I think it's pretty wise advice.
Yeah, I have been seeing that a lot of people are starting to bring like, Guardian Helm, just all kinds of different like things they can swap to based on the situation, which is nice because, I mean, granted it's only tier 4, but still it's more loot, it's more stuff, so it's a little more risky to do it. But yeah, for utility purposes, it makes sense to sometimes carry multiple different items just based on the situation, because that 2v2 situation is always so different.
I think also for 5v5 gates, if you don't know at all what you should bring there, I think it might be interesting to look at what is played during GVGs, because the 5v5 Hellgate meta is pretty close to the GVG meta. So, well, if people play something in GVG, usually they will be able to play it in Hellgates. There is some particularities, but in general, I think it's a good guideline. So, well, as usual, you bring a healer, you bring maybe a tank, like usually a tank. And yeah, after that, you see according to what the meta tells you if you don't know how to build your thing.
Brilliant. So I think we've pretty much covered, with all of these topics, we could sit here and go massively into depth with specs and builds and things. It's good to do some homework. It's good to ask. There are plenty of people that are streaming. So many people come through and talk to me, and I'm very, you have to be honest with, if you don't know something, don't try and guess, and say, oh, this is what you do. So I'm one of these people that if I don't know anything, I'm like, I don't know. But honestly, the Albion community, from my experience of, I've streamed full time, there are so many helpful people. As a streamer, it makes my job so much easier. It helps me. It helps the people in the chat that are asking. You've got people like Veetus. We're living in an age now where you can go into somebody's live channel and talk to them direct and get a response. Sure, you can Google it and stuff, but you've got a person out there that you can go and check out Veetus' stream, by the way. Go and check out Gugusteh's stream, and definitely come and check out my stream if you want to see some potato plays. But these guys and the community itself are absolutely amazing. I'm having the best time with the community, and the help that I'm receiving from everyone is fantastic. So if you've got more things you want to find out, please come in and say, and if we don't know, then I'm sure that there's going to be somebody in the chat that will know. So that's definitely worth keeping in mind.
Well said. Yeah, the community is really good. Really likes to help new players. You nailed it.
This is a good question. How do I fame efficiently?
What's efficient faming? Like, there's like very small group but high tier build, or very like PvE centric. If you want to be just pure PvE, like ready to go, and not necessarily PvP equipped, so you can like be more efficient that way. My personal, like if it's me, I like to go to a more dangerous spot, and I like to go with more players, and that way for me, potentially, hopefully, you're getting more action, more PvP from that, but you're also going with more players, and so it's a little less efficient, but it's also potentially more efficient if you are getting dough because you're hopefully surviving, and if you're surviving, then you're continuing on the group itself, then you're not having to go back and re-gear and do all that because that can obviously hurt your time. So I think the perspective that people can have on what's efficient is completely different. There's definitely people that I know that want to only, go in like 3 people or 4 and like really, 8, flat 8 or 8.1, like, super efficient PvE builds and just do the PvE thing hard. But there's people like me who I like to go with like, almost a blob, like 10 people, and go to a really hot dungeon that's gonna probably get dove. And hopefully it's only like 6 or 7 that are diving and you got the upper edge because you're gonna probably have mobs on you if they're good divers. And there's there's so many different factors that can go into it, but it's also potentially more PvP content, more PvP loot. I like personally larger groups because I like socializing and being a part of large groups. But so yeah, I think everyone's gonna have most people are gonna have a different perspective on what they think is efficient. Because for me, it's large group, which is safer, which means less downtime and more PvP potentially.
Yeah, I think there's efficient and there's optimized.
Mm-hmm.
Because optimized fame, it would be 5 people maximum. Exactly like you said it. So 8.1 or T8 gear with optimized fame weapon, such as the Baden bow, for example, the Incubus mace, and all this kind of stuff that can pretty much help you to kill the mob faster and easier. Now this is really efficient. I think with this kind of stuff, you can go up to like at least 2 million fame per hour, something like this, which is really great. But yeah, the problem with this kind of compositions is that whenever you face PvP, you will almost never be able to fight back because you are optimized to PvE. You don't plan to fight. So, well, personally, whenever I fame, the most efficiently I fame is when I bring 6 to 7 people that I trust usually. And we try to do the dungeons, usually T8 dungeons and stuff like this. But we just have a decent composition with 1 healer or 2 healers maybe to have some to make it easy. We have 1 tank and the rest of us are DPS and what I call support DPS. So the kind of DPS that will maybe pierce the targets. So, well, this is how I think it's the most efficient for me, at least, because usually whenever you face someone, you will be able to fight back. And at the same time, you don't have the kind of parties we just have, so 10 people. And, you are still a bit more efficient in terms of fame. But this requires you to have, let's say, trusted people with you. Because you have a smaller party, so it's a bit harder to manage PvP with that. As a solo player, also to optimize my fame, I think it's interesting to have, let's say, an AoE build, a fast AoE build, such as the Great Axe, Soldier Jacket, like this kind of builds that just rolls through the dungeon, and you just avoid the kind of dungeons that are empty. Because, that's not what I do, because I'm looking for PvP most of the time. But, you just go in a dungeon, you check if it's empty or not. If it's not empty, you just rush through the dungeon, kill all the mobs, and then out, next dungeon, and that's it. And you will be able to achieve a lot of fame. I don't know. I think it's how we do it, Glan, right?
I don't know any other way of fame farming because I am nearly 5 weeks old in Albion Online. I've always had those solo dungeons to go through since I've been there. And I've heard of stories of how you used to solo fame farm with an ox or something, going through mobs, and then you had to do it in a certain way to kill loads of other small ads, and then you were left with like this one person that you could kill. Is very loose. Just from you're laughing, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Well,
Care to elaborate?
well, I think it's not. Like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure you're talking of what I'm thinking, because it's
Okay.
not really fame farming. It's more like it's called more trolling. You know, usually it's more to troll people with a Nox, and you just go and pull all the mob on these people. Well, that's
Oh, right.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that was that's I think they've kind of countered that a little bit with mechanics they put in, I think, since then, like leash range or something maybe on mobs. But yeah, that used to be a thing. Like people would be outside faming like in CV or something, and then people would just make decisions that were not fun for the people that were trying to fame. Because they would just be like stuff you couldn't really fight against, because it was just the way it was designed, it was just a little bit rough. But yeah, I think one thing that I think before solo dungeons like that I did a lot, because and it is an okay way, but it's not as good or as safe actually. So don't do it. But you can actually, like, one thing I used to do is I would be on like a horse, and I would be in a build that's got super AoE attached to it. And for me, it was axe, because that's just my main weapon. And I would go and round up as many mobs as I could, roaming mobs in a zone as I could. Usually in a tier 7 zone, because those mobs didn't just seem to be the easiest to round up because they weren't ranged. And I would essentially round them all up as much as I could, wait for them to dismount me, and then just go AoE crazy, and I would get a pretty good chunk of fame doing that, just going around from mob pack to mob pack. But nowadays with solo dungeons, there's no way I'd probably ever do that again.
So, like I said earlier on, I've done in 5 weeks 13 million PVE fame, and that's solely I'd say maybe a million or two more recently with faction flagging, and then going and doing sort of 4 or 5 man dungeons. But for me, the way that I look at it is I stream. I come onto the stream, and I don't want to spend 5, 10, 15 minutes waiting for the group to get put together. And then after 2 or 3 runs, or maybe even 1 run, somebody will drop out. Then you've got to find that person again. So in that space of half an hour, I would much rather just go in, do the solo dungeon, get the fame. I've been really lucky with gear drops. I think it alternates days. It seems to be. I'll have a good day, bad day, good day, bad day with loot that drops. This morning I had a very, very good day. I got lots of tier 8 drops within the space of back to back to back of solo dungeons. So much that I was running back earlier than expected to bank this gear to make the money so that I could pay for my premium for free to play. Yeah, I think that for me personally, I love solo dungeons, but I only like them as much as I do now because I'm thinking of my end game. It's okay for you guys because you've probably got a lot of specs in 100, and you probably got some 400 specs. But for me, I am just my highest spec is 91 in a normal bow. And then the others are much lower there in the sort of 30s, 40s, 50s range. So for me, I'm just trying to get to that place where I know, okay, I think I do decent damage now. I'm ready to do Hellgates. And that's my mentality. That's not necessarily the best way of thinking about it. But for me, I think I'm going to be doing more damage in these PvP situations if I level up my weapons as high as I can.
Yeah, it makes sense. I think just like I said, for me, I at this point I would prefer to be in a larger group, just because the potential for the group PvP aspect. and I like to go to the more riskier places, especially when you're streaming. Sometimes you get stream sniped, so you get even more potential risk, which means more potential reward as well, which also means more just in general content. It's always fun. There's nothing like PvE, chilling, hanging out with your friends, doing the thing, grinding, and then your heart just instantly jumps up to 150 miles an hour. Your heart rate, because you just see reds just rush onto you, and it's just like a heart attack every time. And it's I never thought heart attack would be fun, but apparently it is in Albion Online. So it's great. I like it, and it's more fun to absorb that content with a group of people as opposed to just myself. But if I were in your shoes, Glenn, I would probably also, if I were starting out newer and I didn't have the spec, I would be doing a lot more solos. And I still do solos from time to time, and I love that they're a great pastime. For example, I don't like waiting for, because I'm streaming. I don't like the downtime. So I will go and do a solo dungeon and just A out when the group's ready, once they're formed and ready to go. So I'll kind of like just be doing that as a pastime, which is great because now they have that. And it's such an easy pastime to just go and hop into and get some content while I'm waiting for the other content.
Yeah, I think that's the best way, I think, to use boss dungeons. So yeah, basically doing a solo dungeon and then going in a group dungeon when your group is ready. I think, yeah, when I used to do some group dungeons, because I don't do much of them anymore, but when I used to do them, we were doing the party, so it was pretty much 30 minutes, let's say, wasted. But after that, whenever someone was leaving, we were just like asking them to just say it's, let's say, one dungeon before, so we could have time to have another teammate in the party. So well, I think that's the best way, and we were able to run dungeons for like 4 hours straight without any interruption after that. So it was pretty efficient.
Nice.
Yeah, definitely. I think after that, well, I think now the cool thing with solo dungeon is that you can do that even if you don't want to spend 2 hours playing. You can just do one dungeon and just A out in the end, join whatever other content you want to do, and well, that's still the best, like a cool way to fame farm. I think, well, like I don't have any more objectives of progression in terms of fame, so well, I can leave pretty much any dungeon without even wondering if I will do damages, because I pretty much know I will do damages. But well, yeah, I think it's I think with the new dungeons, it's pretty cool to be able to leave directly and go to another activity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And one thing too that is like in terms of just progressing while I'm fame farming, like I don't lately, at least I feel like this works better for me. I'd rather do all the damage that I can with the spec that I've already obtained with my axe. And my gear pieces that I have some, gear slots that are 400 as well. So I'm trying to basically get my core gear slots to 400, fame farm in those, and then just use my fame credits, because I get more fame credits, to just level up whatever I want to after that. I feel like it's more efficient for me personally, and I feel like it's more efficient for my group, because I'm doing more damage. I'm basically the best I can be if I'm out there in 400. So I think making good use of the fame credit system can also help with kind of ways of being efficient in terms of leveling up whatever it is that you want to level up. It does cost a lot though. Apparently, I haven't really paid attention to it, but people are telling me that it can be very expensive when you do it on multiple items, because each spec or mastery that you have, essentially you're putting more credits into, but that costs silver each time. So it costs money, but it's worth it for me.
Time saver. Definitely, you're clearing things much quicker, and instead of that fame going to waste, you are storing it. And I have, as a new player as well, getting up to the higher end towards 100 level, when I switch out and go onto another one, as soon as my bow fighter was 100, I started to get those fame credits because it wasn't going into that core 100 at the beginning of the branch when it goes into the 4 options. So fame credits will be something that we talk about probably another time, go into more depth. But as we said earlier on, all of us, Veetus is over in the States, and myself and Gugusteh over here in, the EU side. Definitely come in and check us out and, ask the community, not just us, there's loads of other great streamers out there as well. They are there to help, and they are there to ask. So thank you very much for listening to our podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.